Welcome back to TrueRadar. Tonight, lower your lights, adjust your volume, and settle in. Take a deep breath and prepare for one of the most captivating and dark chapters of cult history. The first thing the responder noticed was the silence. It wasn't just the ordinary quiet of a luxury suburban neighborhood on a Wednesday afternoon. It was a heavy, artificial stillness that seemed to press down on the walls of the 9,000 square foot mansion at 18,241 Colina, Norte. The sprawling estate, hidden behind perfectly manicured hedges in the ultra-wealthy enclave of Rancho Santa Fe, California, had been rented out for $7,000 a month by a group of incredibly polite, intensely private software developers. They ran a highly successful web design business called Hire Source. Neighbors rarely saw them, save for occasional glimpses of them walking down the circular driveway to collect the mail, always dressed in loose, oversized clothing, always moving in pairs, and always smiling with a strange, uniform detachment. Finding the back door unlocked, the investigator stepped into the foyer. He expected to find a typical medical emergency, or perhaps the messy aftermath of a high-end burglary. Instead, he was hit by a heavy clinical scent, a thick, unmistakable mixture of rubbing alcohol, cheap medicine, and crisp, sterile air pumping through the central vents. The house was immaculately, flawlessly clean. There wasn't a single stray dish in the kitchen sink, no papers left out on the counters, and no signs of a struggle whatsoever. In the main office, dozens of high-end computer terminals sat glowing in the dark, their servers humming quietly as they hosted live websites for local businesses. But as the investigator pushed open the heavy wooden doors leading to the master bedrooms, the true nature of the silence became clear. Lying on neat bunk beds and mattresses spread evenly across the carpet were dozens of bodies. They were all lying completely flat on their backs, their arms pinned straight down by their sides. Every single one of them was dressed in identical, brand-new black shirts, matching sweatpants, and pristine black and white Nike sneakers. By the side of each bed sat a neatly packed, zipped suitcase, as if they were all waiting in a terminal for a late-night flight. And draped perfectly over the head and torso of each person was a single, square shroud of brilliant purple silk. There were 39 people in total. No blood, no weapons, no signs of panic. They looked as though they had simply laid down to rest after a long, exhausting journey, waiting for an invisible signal that only they could hear. To understand how an elite team of tech-savvy professionals arrived at this chillingly precise moment, we have to rewind the clock 25 years to a time when early internet anxiety, psychological isolation, and a deep obsession with the cosmos collided under the gaze of a single, mesmerizing leader. To find the roots of the tragedy at Colina, Norte, we have to travel back to 1972, to a psychiatric health facility in Texas. It was there that Marshall Herf Applewhite, a former Army soldier and university music professor, met a 44-year-old registered nurse named Bonnie Lou Nettles. Both were at profound turning points in their lives. Applewhite had recently been dismissed from his university position and was suffering from severe depression, his marriage having collapsed due to deep personal turmoil. Nettles, meanwhile, was a deeply spiritual woman who wrote an astrology column and believed she was in regular communication with a 19th century Franciscan friar through weekly seances. When the two met, the connection was instant and overwhelming. Applewhite later claimed that the moment he looked into Nettles' eyes, he felt he had known her for multiple lifetimes. Nettles told Applewhite that his arrival had been directly foretold to her by extraterrestrial beings, convincing the deeply depressed former musician that he had been chosen for a divine, cosmic assignment. The pair immediately abandoned their conventional lives, leaving their families and careers behind to go on a nomadic journey across America. They slept in tents, lived out of the back of a stolen rental car, and spent their nights reading works of science fiction, studying astronomical charts, and dissecting the Book of Revelation. By the summer of 1974, their philosophy had solidified into something entirely unique. They concluded that they were the two apocalyptic witnesses mentioned in biblical prophecy. They began traveling to small towns, standing in community centers and New Age bookstores, calling themselves the UFO Two, or more simply, Bo and Peep. Later, they would adopt the names Toy and Doe. Their message was bizarre, yet strangely compelling to those who felt alienated by the rapidly changing world of the 1970s. They taught that the universe was governed by an elite, highly evolved race of extraterrestrials who existed on a literal, physical plane called the next level. This evolutionary kingdom was completely free of human flaws. There was no pain, no disease, no greed, and no gender. Applewhite and Nettles claimed that human bodies were nothing more than temporary biological vehicles, mere spacesuits meant to be worn on Earth. They promised their early followers that if they renounced their earthly attachments, a physical, unidentified flying object would appear in the sky, resurrect them, and carry them away to the stars. For the first decade, the group existed as a highly secretive, wandering commune, moving silently through campgrounds in Oregon, Colorado, and Utah. But in 1985, a massive shift occurred within the community. Bonnie Nettles, the co-leader whom Applewhite viewed as his spiritual anchor, passed away from liver cancer. This death presented a catastrophic theological crisis for Applewhite. According to their doctrine, graduation to the next level was supposed to happen together, in their physical, biological bodies. Now, half of the two was gone, buried in the earth. To keep the group from splintering, Applewhite slowly and meticulously reconfigured their entire belief system. He told his grieving followers that Nettles hadn't truly died. Her consciousness had simply shed its damaged biological vehicle prematurely to return to the spacecraft, where she was now watching over them, waiting to pilot the ship that would collect the rest of the crew. From that moment on, Applewhite's teachings took on a darker, much more urgent tone. He became the sole, absolute authority of the group, and his focus shifted toward absolute control over the minds and bodies of his followers. He began warning them that the planet Earth was an old, corrupted laboratory that was imminently going to be completely recycled and scrubbed clean by the cosmic creators. The only way to escape the impending destruction was to completely conquer the human container. By the early 1990s, the group had transitioned from wandering campgrounds into high-end, rented suburban properties in California, funding their lifestyle through their meticulous web design business. Inside these homes, Applewhite established a way of life defined by an almost terrifying degree of monastic precision. He created a thick, leather-bound volume known as the Procedures Book, which governed the most basic, everyday actions of every member down to the second. The followers lived in absolute, collective uniformity. To completely eliminate any trace of individuality, human ego, or gender, all members, both men and women, were forced to shave their heads entirely and wear identical, loose-fitting, high-collared, unisex clothing. Sexual attraction, hugging, and any form of sensuality or romantic attachment were strictly forbidden, viewed as low-level human defects that anchored the soul to the earth. The suppression of the biological vehicle was taken to such an extreme that Applewhite, along with several of his most dedicated male followers, traveled to Mexico City to undergo surgical castration, physically erasing their sexuality to ensure they were pure enough for the next level. Every single minute of the day inside the mansion was structured by the ticking of digital clocks, The procedures book dictated that all members must take their vitamins at exactly 7:22 a.m. It dictated the exact brand of razor they had to use to shave, the specific route they had to walk when moving from the kitchen to the bedroom, and even the precise mathematical circumference allowed for pancakes made in the kitchen. If a member had a fleeting human thought, a wave of doubt, or a memory of their past family, they were required to immediately report it to a designated partner for mutual criticism to cleanse their minds. Yet, despite this rigid control, the followers did not view themselves as prisoners. To the young, tech-savvy programmers who joined in the 90s, the mansion was a peaceful, highly organized sanctuary away from the chaos and commercialism of modern society. They were highly intelligent, soft-spoken, and deeply happy in their shared isolation, spending their nights coding the early architecture of the World Wide Web by day, and searching the dark night skies through powerful telescopes by night, waiting for their final instructions. Those instructions appeared in the sky in the spring of 1997, deep in the freezing void of space. A massive, brilliant anomaly known as the Hale-Bopp Comet was hurtling toward Earth, lighting up the global night sky with a spectacular glowing tail that could be seen clearly with the naked eye. To astronomers, it was an incredible scientific event. But inside the silent mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, it was interpreted as the ultimate cosmic bell toll. A rumor began circulating through early internet message boards and UFO communities that a mysterious, highly advanced artificial object, a colossal spacecraft, was flying directly behind the tail of the comet, hidden from human telescopes by the celestial debris. When Applewhite read this, he knew the time had come. He told his 38 followers that the ship had finally arrived. Bonnie Nettles was at the helm, and the window for their graduation was closing. Because the spaceship was purely spiritual and technological, they could not take their physical, biological containers with them. They had to shed their earthly spacesuits to board the craft. The exit plan was executed over the course of 3 days in late March, divided into 3 precise, orderly waves of 15, 15, and 9 people, so that those who remained could carefully assist those who went first, tidying the rooms and smoothing the purple shrouds over their companions' beds. Each wave mixed a lethal dose of phenobarbital into bowls of applesauce and pudding, washed it down with vodka, and secured plastic bags over their heads to ensure absolute success. They packed their bags, placed $5 bills in their pockets as a symbolic transport fee for the cosmos, put on their brand new Nikes, and stepped away from the physical world in absolute, echoing silence, fully convinced they were ascending into the stars. Tonight, as you listen to the steady, rhythmic falling of the rain, let the heavy details of the world outside fade away. Let the contrast of that quiet California mansion remind you of the safety, warmth, and grounded reality of your own space. Allow your thoughts to settle. Let the tension leave your shoulders, and listen to the calm, steady rhythm of the evening. Close your eyes. Let the rain carry you into the dark, and fall asleep in minutes